We recently took our young children on a cruise for the first time, and here are a few things we wish we knew before we sailed.
Our first tip is to take a look ahead at your dining options. Now, there are several dining options on cruise ships, but you want to be careful that you keep it as close to your children's normal schedules as possible. For example, our children usually eat lunch at 11 a.m. and they eat dinner at 5 p.m. And if they don't, then it gets really crazy at our house. So we try to keep them on that schedule. You'll want to try to take a look at that with your own children on a cruise boat. You're going to have a couple of different dining options. There's going to be the main dining room, and you'll schedule that at a certain time. So make sure that's as close to the time that your children eat as possible. And there's also some different lunch places and spots that you can go, but make sure you know what time those open and close, because sometimes there's not an overlap. So you'll want to plan for that if you're on a cruise boat.
And if there are some dining venues that are open throughout the day, then you can use those to supplement for some of the other ones that you want to go to as a family. So maybe go somewhere and get something small in order to help your children along until the next scheduled dining time.
Our next tip is to take a look ahead at the entertainment that's provided on your cruise ship. Not all cruise ship entertainment is appropriate for children. A lot of them will say family friendly, but you really have to take a look at it and make sure it really is with your toddlers or small children. Another thing to consider is that most cruise entertainment is late at night. So on our cruise ship, the entertainment started at 9:30 and our 2-year-old goes to bed at 7:30. So that just simply was not going to work. But another thing you want to be aware of is that the entertainment is also very loud. The music's loud, the performances are loud, and when you have small children, that's just not going to be good for them. So just take that into consideration.
We learned to supplement the entertainment options with some other activities which were taking place on board. So there can be some other forms of entertainment that are going on throughout the day that might not necessarily be the big show at night. Like for example, on the cruise that we just took, there were some musical performances that were taking place just ahead of dining time and just after dining time. And that gave us some time to just have some fun together as a family and create some memories, even though our kids would not have been able to go to the 9:30 show. Well, another thing that you want to be aware of is that it seems to be pretty standard in most cruise ship cabins that there are no bathtubs. So when you are traveling with toddlers, that's one of the things that we typically look for in a hotel room. If you have the option to select a cabin that has a bathtub, then we would encourage you to go for that. Or else be thinking about how that you are going to be able to bathe your toddler and try to make some other arrangements. And another thing about cruise ships is you want to think about where they're located on the boat, because our toddler, our 2-year-old, he has never been a very good sleeper anyway. He is really easily woken up. And if you are underneath a dining hall or right next door to a club or just a short distance from the theater, then those loud sounds can travel to your cabin, and you want to make sure that you are not at least next door, either above, beneath, or beside of some other kind of really loud venue.
Another thing that you'll want to consider is the sleeping arrangements in your cabin room that you choose. For example, on the cruise boat that we went on, we had bunk beds that came out from the wall, which was very helpful because our 5-year-old could sleep on the top bunk, our 2-year-old on the bottom bunk, but initially we did not know that existed. So we brought our pack and play, and we were kind of just hoping for the best, but make sure you know what the sleeping arrangements are ahead of time. Another tip is to consider play areas for your children when you're on a cruise boat. So on the cruise that we took, there was one pool, but it was 4.5 feet deep. So our 5-year-old couldn't even really swim in it. And we had some floaties, but she still wasn't comfortable because she couldn't touch the bottom. So that's not great for small children. And also there were 2 hot tubs, but they were always full of adults. And so she couldn't even play in those either. So make sure you know that ahead of time, that they might not be able to swim in the pools that are on the cruise boat that you choose.
Instead, it may be ideal for you to try to book your cruise with the children's play areas in mind. Some cruise ships have shallower pools and even some water playgrounds that are available, so be on the lookout for those. Most cruise ships also offer kids clubs for their passengers. We've never been keen on that idea. Maybe we're helicopter parents, but I don't like the idea of signing our child up, dropping them off with a complete stranger
on a cruise boat.
Yeah, for a couple hours. So I'm sure it's all safe and sound and fine, and there are policies and things like that that you can sign, but we've never been comfortable with that. Maybe you will be. Our most recent cruise didn't have a lot of amenities for children, but our kids loved climbing the stairs.
That was their favorite part.
And also there was an arcade on board, so sometimes that can be a lot of fun if there's an arcade option. And then also another fun thing is to just find an open space for your kids to be able to run around and play. And you might even be able to bring some toys. Now you want to keep in mind that you don't want to bring anything that's likely to go over the side of the ship, like a ball or something. But there might be some other things that they could play with in some of those open areas. Our next tip is to give some consideration to what you're going to do while you're in port. Now, there are a lot of excursions that are available. They can sound really adventurous and exciting. And this is probably something where Elena excels far more than I do. I naturally think of really exciting, adventurous things, and I want to do everything. And ordinarily, when we would cruise just the two of us, we would just get off of the ship and then like hire some taxi in the port area to carry us somewhere, and maybe schedule our own thing apart from the cruise line. But when we are thinking about traveling with our children, I've learned that we have to give more thought in advance to what we're going to do for the excursion and how that's going to play out throughout the day with them. And at the excursion, what is there going to be for them to do? So when we sailed to Freeport this time, we probably would have recommended going to Pirates Cove because there were a few playgrounds, a big giant slide, and a few activities that they could do. Or we went to Paradise Cove and they got to swim with the turtles and the fish and see manta ray. But we probably would try to steer clear of some of the excursions which would involve like hiking up the side of a mountain or like going deep sea fishing or something.
Yeah, or snorkeling.
Yeah,
you can't do that with toddlers. That's not going to work.
Yeah, so giving some real consideration to like, okay, how is this excursion actually going to play out? And maybe moms are better at that than dads are. Yeah.
And last but certainly not least, just make sure you have all the supplies that you need. A couple of things that were helpful for us were to bring pool floaties, sunscreen, the basics, but also for a cruise specifically, we found that bringing extra water bottles was helpful. That way you can fill them up upstairs and you can bring them down to your cabin and you don't have to keep going back and forth. So I brought one for myself, a couple for the kids, and that was very helpful. Another thing is to bring a power strip or an extension cord because you only have one outlet on a cruise boat. And so you want to make sure that you have multiple outlets because for kids, sometimes you're using a sound machine and you have to plug in something else. So just keep that in mind. You might want to pack that with you.
And when it comes to those power outlets as well, there are some things that you cannot bring and plug in on a cruise ship, so you're going to want to check those lists in advance prior to your first sailing. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about the trip that we recently took, you can click this video right here.